Okay.
I'll be there till 2 a.m.
Everybody ready? Are we online? Where's my guy? Okay, there we go. Perfect. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Today is Tuesday, June 27th, 2023. It is 4:10 p.m. We're convened at the Provo City School District Board of Education, and we're meeting at 280 West 940 North in Provo, Utah today. We're going to begin with a roll call. I'm Rebecca Nielsen, Board President.
Jennifer Partridge, Vice President.
Melanie Hall, Board Member.
Lisa Boyce, Board Member. Meg Van Wagenen, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Wendy Dow, Superintendent.
Okay, is there a motion to convene our study session?
I move that we convene our study session.
Thank you. Motion made by Board Member Hall. Is there a second?
I'll say. Oh, go Jen.
Second by Board Member Partridge. We're now in our study session. All right, today we are going to be hearing some reports from our, what we call our council members, which are our assistant superintendents. We won't be hearing from secondary or elementary today due to just transition of our employees there, but we will be hearing from everyone else. And we did this last June, and it was actually a really great exercise for us to be able to hear kind of their biggest need or want in their department, and helps give us kind of a sense of direction and on things that we approve and stuff we look into and directions to move in. Anyway, so we'll be doing that again today. And so we are going to start with that, and I'm actually looking forward to this. This is going to be great. So, Henry, you're the first person I made eye contact with. Would you like to go first? Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for letting me meet with you again. I have a slide that has, as I was explaining the assignment early on, one of our strengths and one area where we need to grow. And here they are, my strength and concern. The first one, I will say the strength, looking at that. Oh, you had a preview, so now we'll do the animation and bingo, our strength. So in the issue of K-3 reading, which you all know is extremely important, that the data of students not succeeding in reading after grade 3, their chance of learning to read later, learn well, is really low. And if you don't obviously learn to read well, you don't learn a lot of things very well. So that's a huge goal for the state. It's one of our main accountability programs that we in the teaching and learning department look over. And so we recently did a needs analysis through the Board of Education is taking all district and school leaders eventually through a training process in their overall, you've heard about the letters training that went on. Principals did a version of that, and district people, and now they're doing an accompanying training to that, kind of following that principle of coaching, that if coaching doesn't occur, implementation doesn't occur. So this is training in change management for leaders at the school and district level. So it was one of the exercises they took the district team through earlier this month, an early literacy needs assessment. And we scored very high in the area for evidence-based curriculum or teaching materials for K-3. And to quickly explain, to meet that we had to meet high evidence levels, and the state put out a list of those that met their criteria, but all of ours met their criteria. We have a strong core program, that's our Wonders program. After using that for a few years in our curriculum review cycle, we found that we were missing instruction in phonics and phonemic awareness. We got that through our 95% core now as supplemental. That's what teachers have been learning as they've been going through letters, and really found that to be helpful. And then we also have some really good tier 2 and 3 intervention programs. So there are other areas where we didn't score as low, and that's where we're looking. One was principal training. One is our teacher training. We scored high in having accomplished. We haven't collected a lot of evidence. We just finished the first round of letters training. In any case, we feel well poised with that. We have comprehensive curricular resources for early reading instruction. And again, I would add to that, we've had some good opportunities for professional learning support by doing classroom coaching on the program, the supplemental program, using letters principals at the same time. I'll list that. Bonnie, if you click once more, thank you. The concern, I'm going to give you a rerun of last year because it's probably the thing I hear the most from people in my department and teachers and principals. So the issue is just competition for resources. And I think of resources as time, money, space, and people. And we have a finite limit of that. This evidence is long and extensive and anecdotal, but we have limited resources and too many somewhat unprioritized initiatives. In my department, I'm leading our leaders through a process of trying to identify professional offerings in a more organized way, because I think a teacher could come to our district and say, oh, should I register for this class or should I get this endorsement? They're all seemingly equally important, and so we're trying to say, you know, here's a first teacher criteria that are associated with our new educator standards. But this goes on, you know, I remember that last year we talked about all the programs we have, and we heard this conversation this morning, is that we have a lot of things that are good and too much good is bad. We're getting, I think, we're getting lost in too many good things. And we have to admit, what can our resources support and give some help to all levels of employees about what are things we're going to make sure we have in place, we dedicate, what are still the district's expectations. One thing that I hear with some frequency is a teacher or an administrator saying, oh, we're not doing that anymore, and it makes me feel really bad that somehow the message that, oh, that program is extinct and gone, and the message didn't get down where it needed to get on that. So I think I think your strategic planning is really going to help us with this. And then I will happily take that to my department, and as I'm sure the rest of the leaders will, in helping us make some prioritization and some hard decisions about the many good things that are going on.
Okay. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any quick questions or need any clarification from Anne-Marie?
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was saying oh to her. Don't turn around yet, Anne-Marie. Lisa has her hand raised.
Okay. One thing I'd love to see is sort of some feedback from teachers on that first year of letters training. Like, how did they feel about it? How did it inform their practices, and what helped them most from it? Like, I don't know if you have that data. I know you guys often get feedback, but I think that would be interesting to see in terms of how that's serving them in their classrooms.
Okay. I will.
I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just raising it, something I thought of.
Yeah, we have collected some anecdotally for the
Yeah.
state. Let me see what I can find and compile easily. But I can tell you that the feedback we got in Provo was far better than many of our neighboring districts. And I get that when this is done at a large scale, this becomes more complex.
Who does the letters training? Is it at the state?
So this came through state contract. This came through a state law that required several things like this principal training, that you have research-based materials, that certain assessments are used to determine certain things. So they are the vendor, and Lexia is the ultimate vendor behind that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Jason? Yeah, for it.
You bet. Thank you, board members, for this opportunity to talk a little bit about human resources. A couple of the things that I would like to celebrate or share with you that are celebrations is that we've gone through a couple of tough years as far as trying to have everybody be able to be at work and all the things with illnesses and different things that we faced. But one of the things that we were able to do this last year is increase our ability to cover people while they were out. Our substitute rates climbed pretty dramatically in the second half of the year. We were an overall average of 94% coverage this year, that's right we would like it in the range of 94 to 96% on a yearly basis. Of course, if it's better, that's great, but we were able to get up to that goal this year, and so we felt good about that. A lot of the things we do are very collaborative in human resources, and so the other things that I would celebrate are things that we did with, our business office, other people like that. For instance, again, our negotiations went really well. We work well with each of the groups. We meet with them monthly. We do a lot to try to understand their needs. And with your help and support, we were able to give them a very positive raise this year, which is always a good outcome. But the working conditions piece that we meet about monthly too is an important part of that, addressing any of their concerns that they have, building specific, or if it's, for instance, bus drivers, more job specific, and being able to address those in a pretty timely manner. So those are our celebrations. The thing I mentioned last year, and this will probably be a theme ongoing if we do this each summer, we always need to continue to try to be as competitive as possible in our wages for our employees. And again, I know that you're a big part of that. I know that our business office is a big part of that. There's a lot of people who play a role in being able to help us to be more competitive and try to pay our teachers well, pay everyone in the organization so that they feel valued, and we can worry about other things that make people feel valued too. But that one's always usually pretty close to top of the list, if not top of the list. And so I would say that that's the ongoing concern of what we would like to work on and continue to work on in this coming year.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Any quick questions or clarifications needed from Jason? Okay, thank you so much. All right, let's see. You're just standing up, so I guess you're volunteering. All right.
You would see me. I didn't want to be in your blind spot. We're not going to be forgotten today.
Thank you for standing up and making yourself visible.
Thank you. Similar to human resources, it has been a year of talking less about COVID, right, and talking about return to normal, but yet normal is a little different than it was before. I think we're realizing that there is a latent effect that we're all feeling. Jason spoke to it in regards to our personnel. We're certainly seeing it on the student engagement and participation piece. So also, I guess, while I'm talking about that has been an ongoing focus for us, there has been a significant heightened awareness about safety protocols and procedures. At this time last year, we were just in the wake of what had happened in Texas, the Uvalde incident. We ourselves had a little bit of a discomforting thing happen at Timpanogos. It involved a resident who ended up kind of going back into their home and kind of barricading themselves in and so forth. Without sharing too many details, it alarmed some of our neighborhoods about what our safety procedures and protocols are. It has always been a priority in student services, but we really felt like, particularly as I met with the communications team, saying we're probably could say we're safe, but if you don't feel safe, you're not safe. So in other words, it really is an affect. To say you're safe but you don't feel so can be a compromising thing. So we recognized that we wanted to work this last year on a safety campaign, and so the work of student services and the communication team came together to have a big launch in the fall about this is what your school does, this is what your school has in place for you, and then we had regular different things. We would go from everything from this is the emphasis around getting to school safely. This is if you're not feeling well and not regulated, you've got access to a social worker in your school, and this is what they can do to help you. And we just had different themes throughout the whole year. I love the fact now that we have a bank of resources available to us. I had a university professor reach out to me the other day and said, we got this class assignment, we'd like to see what other districts around the Provo area are doing around safety and security. And I just went to our communications team that has a whole bank of not only just some protocols, but video presentations and articles that have been well written, very accessible to members of our community to understand how they are benefited from and how they participate actively in safety and security. So we really feel like, of course, there's always need for improvement in that area. Myself and Jason Garrison, who's my director who primarily sees over safety and security, are headed to a 2-day conference later this week to get additional updates. So it's always a work in progress. evidence that I think that we're making some growth is that the responses that we had to make this year. We had a couple of responses at Jared Sykes School at Provo High School that called upon us to be there in short notice and coordinate multiple agencies. We had a hoax of sorts that was really quite remarkable to see how a barrier had been established and how quickly some communication had taken place, and protocols were reached, everything from working even into the transportation department, our need to possibly adjust some bus routes, the food department. It was really nice to see some of the work of articulating not just a first response, but then what is all the continued response until the problem is resolved. And a great, again, investment that we made with the communications team is that people aren't needing to kind of try and find their child on the other side of a text or social media outlet to find out what's going on within the school. We've become and want to be the resource by which people get updates on what's going on in each of our incidents. So that incident response has been something we're really proud of, the growth that we've made there, and we anticipate that there's more that we can do, of course. In that same vein, we finally got off of the status of being where we're piloting visitor management systems, where I think all of our elementary schools have that visitor management system where you can't, during school hours, access that building without going through a significant amount of assurances to who you are and why you're there. The building isn't readily available for you to enter. So that's been an ongoing project that the facilities team has been helping us with, the communication team's been helping us with. We've gone through some of the cutting edges, things like different vendors who have got those kiosks and so forth, and the camera systems and so forth. That was a real harder project than we thought, right? And we gratefully had a cooperation with our Provo City Police Department under the COPS grant to get a lot of that going. But boy, the devil's in the details. It's like buying something and thinking it's going to work, but then it doesn't, and not sure why it doesn't, right? And so there was a significant effort over probably a year and a half to say at the end of the year we were finally in a place where all of our elementary schools are online with this and had been for a majority of the school year, and we're prepared and positioned to move forward with 3 of our secondary schools at the beginning of next year. So we still, again, have the nuance of what the comprehensive high school looks like because of the comings and goings of kids all day long, but we really have a high level of enthusiasm about what that piece of our security plan is going to have in place. Also, we're distributing right now the 2-way radios that have ever been presented to you before that allows for constant and regular communication between all of our buildings on a secure and a registered frequency that it helps with communication day to day within the building, but then also between schools and with the district office. So that was finally something that we were able to get implemented, and we're in the process now of making site visits with each of our schools, setting up the time with student services to deliver and train on those radios. Another thing that, again, not to again put our whole playbook out there, but also the things around security film. We do have a number of particular newer schools have a lot of glass in entryways and so forth, and a lot of effort's been made there. Again, in the matter of just what's appropriate to share publicly, a lot of effort's been made there to handle those access points, and we appreciate our facilities committee and others, safety committee, others who've come together and coalesced around this idea that that's a priority to us. Let's get it done. So really feel good about the initiatives we've done with safety and security this year. Another thing that we've had the opportunity to work on as a second point is the increase, as I said earlier, about student social, emotional, and behavioral support. It has been, as far as the data would show us, it's been a high incident of students feeling dysregulated. That's a fancy way to say there's been a lot of naughty behavior this last year. The number of incidents of office discipline referrals, district office referrals for screenings for what we kind of call our tier 3 or severe safe school violations was up significantly. We had at some point during I think a section of the year, we probably had 2 to 3 different threat assessments going at any time during the school year. And I'd like to say that, oh yeah, it's just those secondary kids, but no, I think the equal amount of these were coming from individuals at every level, including elementary schools, of things referring to a threat to harm self or others, and giving off the impression they had a reason or access or so forth. So we run a very thorough student threat assessment process, and we gratefully have had lots of opportunities to practice and follow through and provide the interventions and support. Sometimes that involves multiple agencies that we bring to bear: law enforcement, juvenile justice folks, we bring in Wasatch Behavioral Health, we bring in a lot of agencies who will support us in responding to not just the situation that we find at home, I mean in the school, but we know that that also carries itself out of home. So we've made a lot of progress in the work of being prepared to run an effective tool, but we are concerned about the high number of incidents that we've been seeing about students really demonstrating that they're not maybe perhaps in a real state of equilibrium and regulated at school the past year. Jennifer.
I'm just curious, you said you're usually responding to one or two of those at a time.
Mm-hmm.
How long is that process for you? I mean, is it like a week that you're
Yeah.
looking into that, or?
Yeah, thank you. It's a multiple step process. For instance, we ask all those people around that student. We ask, for instance, the parents to give us some feedback. We ask the teachers to give us some feedback. We actually interview the student. We interview the individual who maybe heard of the threat or any witnesses and so forth. And that coalesces around some data gathering that there's a protocol that they go through and answer some well-defined processes, questions that say, to what degree is this a threat that we need to respond to, in what ways, right? We use what's called the Salem-Kaiser model here. We've been working with that for about 6 years now. But again, gratefully, everyone in my staff, everyone from my directors, myself, and some of my specialists know how to respond to, so we can get out to schools and help guide that process if they feel like that they have any discomfort running it themselves. So in other words, there's a level 1 assessment that schools can do by themselves, but then if they say, no, there's a significant thing here we need additional eyes on, they'll raise it to a level 2, and then a district committee with other agencies around the city will respond to that level 2. We probably only have had maybe in this last calendar year, maybe 2, maybe 3 level 2 requests.
Oh, okay, so 1 to 2 weeks, not at the district level, or at the school level.
Yeah, at the school level, 1 to 2 per week.
Okay.
We've had as a whole district in our 18 campuses. So thank you for that question. So one of the things that I see as an accomplishment, that's not something I'm supposed to be talking about rather than alarms here, an accomplishment of seeing that the infrastructures and things we'd put in place were prepared to respond to these things. I don't think we were caught not knowing what to do. Like, we're paralyzed with fear around what to do with kids. Now, are there concerns in individual situations, particularly maybe newly appointed principals, trying to figure out what their resources are to figure out how to manage a student who might be a little bit difficult to handle? Yeah, but that gives all kinds of opportunity for the supervisors and my department and the social workers to kind of team around and create some good strategies about how to manage the behavior. We, as a result, have found each of our schools, each of our 18 campuses runs a regular student success team meeting where they bring together the key stakeholders. And that's been something that I want to give Alex Judson and Todd McKee some credit for that, as the 2 supervisors working with student services, that there's a team who comes together and talks about the kids that they're most concerned around, their well-being and their safety at school. And it's a very effective meeting for checking in and looking at the data, looking at the assignments that were given to sometimes do a home visit, sometimes try a student success behavior plan, and that they're constantly working to help those students out. We appreciate this fact that the fact this year that we have a classroom, a cluster classroom at each of our levels. The elementary is located at Amelia Earhart. And we had, at the start of the year, we had 19 students, K through 6, who were in that classroom. So they're away from their home school, but getting targeted support around behavior. This year, we had about 8 of those students transition back to their home schools this year. And there's a little bit of effect of that. During COVID, it was hard to do all those transition services, so we were really primed to get those students back to their regular schools with a transition plan and the supports they need. Often many of them going with an individual education plan to support them when they got back to their home school. But it's always great to have them in what we call the least restrictive behavior intervention with their non-disabled peers back in their neighborhood school. And we saw that with nearly 50% of the kids in that cluster classroom at the elementary school this last year. So we see that as a huge accomplishment. That's probably, I mean, I could go on, and as you can tell, it's been a busy year, and it has set kind of the tone for us around the things that we want to continue to work on. You, as a board, have worked with our department and with the superintendent to develop an attendance policy. That's a significant thing to take on, as we've talked about many times. So we're seeing that as, 1, as an accomplishment, 2, but a work in progress. You've already got me on the calendar so excited to come to report to you in the fall about how our attendance efforts are going. Because student engagement and well-being are going to be our emphasis this upcoming year. I think what we've come out of this year has set a tone of saying build greater capacity and systems and do what we can preventatively and involving as many people in a student's life as possible to help increase their engagement, which leads to academic success, as well as their well-being, which means that they're regulated, they're ready to learn, they're in this good cognitive space where they're making the most of the educational experiences, right? So we've already this summer had some training on this attendance policy. Schools are formulating plans about how they're going to communicate with their staff, with their parents, with their students, and rolling out this emphasis on re-engagement at school, where we're not only just looking at truancy, as you're well, but we're also looking at chronic absenteeism. You've heard the numbers around that I think are indicative even of this district, that about 1 in 4 students last year was chronically absent, which means that they had attendance at less than 90%. So that doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but all of, again, those that do evidence-based research on this say this begins to impact their ability to learn when they miss that much school. And so we're going to have a real emphasis on taking those benchmark numbers, and we're going to look to see if we can improve them, and improve them in a marked way this year as we all collectively work on the attendance and engagement process. We also did some training on helping each of the schools utilize what's called trauma-informed care and behavior response. So in other words, recognizing that we're seeing that part of what we're saying when there's more students who seem to be dysregulated and having a hard time monitoring their own behavior and being under control in classrooms and in settings, is that some of this could be as the dysregulation that was forced or caused by maybe recent world events or personal events they've had in their families. So that's essentially a trauma response that we're trying to make sure that people not see that you're going to discipline kids out of their trauma, but they're going to help support, see them where they're at. The 3 words that we're using are relate, regulate, reason. That's going to be our 3 R's of de-escalation and trying to bring students along where you want to relate. In other words, you hear many times, connect before you correct. It's that same principle of relate with the student, help them get their breathing regulated and so forth. That's where you kind of relate with them. Regulate is this idea about getting to the point where they're working on their breathing, they're working on getting good, clear thinking and utilizing something like a wellness space in a classroom or in a whole school. You've heard a lot of our schools, not to say the majority, are in the process or have some wellness centers that are really well utilized. We shared some best practice the last 2 weeks about what those centers can and should look like. And then the last is using the restorative questions, help them reason through, like what were you thinking at the time? Who did this impact? How do you resolve this problem? So in other words, some good ways to teach behavior management as opposed to thinking that punitive or exclusionary discipline is going to manage our problem. That's not our approach in student service, thinking we can discipline our kids to behaving better. We want to teach. We take this as much as student teaching and learning would say, a student's not reading at grade level, what does he need? He doesn't need to be suspended to home to have parents figure that out. He needs to be brought closer to you in a small group where you teach him the skills about acquiring the skills to read. We feel like the same around behavior management. So I think that is one thing that you'll see different. Also is that we've taken and repurposed some money this year. We had a full-time social worker. We had 2 full-time social workers at Independence last year. We've gone with a creative idea. And I want to credit, Derek's department, others are giving me this idea of saying, take that contract and let's give all of our high schools who have large populations, who've only had 1 social worker, we're going to take an hourly social worker and place them in addition to that team. So they'll have a full-time social worker plus like a 29-hour employee social worker. If you can imagine this, Gina, some social workers who get home and say, I still want to be a school social worker, but I don't know if I can take on a full-time job. We had a number of really great people apply for that job, Gina. Maybe someday you
want
will.
me to apply for that
Yeah,
job?
maybe. Yeah. So we've got 3 of those positions, and we had excellent candidates who are in a situation they just want to work a little bit, but they're licensed, clinical, very experienced. In fact, they've even had some life experiences where they can come in and relate effectively with people. So we're excited about this addition to our high schools this year. They'll all have, in addition to their full-time social worker, they'll also have an additional staff who's going to work hourly as well on that team. So anyway, those are some of the initiatives we're taking on this year. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doug. All right. Let's see. Is anybody standing up? Caleb, I made eye contact with you. You're next.
Is there anybody else? That's fair. That's
Troy, are you
one
presenting for transportation? No.
The next item. Rebecca,
You-
next item.
Oh.
Oh, not for that, yeah.
Yes, I get it. But Derek, you have one, so, okay.
Caleb, I feel
Well,
like we need
I'll
class
just-
for Caleb.
Okay, so, well, we've had a lot of accomplishments this year. You guys, I think, saw the email that I sent last week about the awards that our department won. Those are some of the things we're most proud of, but specifically they all speak to the work we've done to build relationships and try to be into the schools and change how communication is happening. The Provo Way Award, working with Jason and the HR team members and celebrations committee, we made a lot of changes to that this year, and that allowed us, one, to recognize our employees in a more personal and better way, but also building off of that recognition, we were able to improve our employee newsletter open rate. We were able to build a stock of footage for videos, so we don't have to go get video every time we need to make a new video or to have a new project to do. So we're able to implement these changes and build the capacity of our department off of those instead of just making one-off changes. The blog award that we received, we're proud of that one. That's a lot of work from Spencer and Alex in our department, getting out to the schools and finding out and building relationships with departments and teachers and principals to understand what's really going on and be able to communicate the great things happening. If you've noticed our news stories this year, they've moved up a level to where they're not just a cool lesson happening here or an award here or somebody came to visit here. It's really diving into learning and doing series and working with teachers and programs to really highlight what's going on in the schools. So we'll look to continue that this year. As far as things that we're looking to improve this year, you've probably already seen some of it, but as we're going through as you guys were going through the superintendent search, we saw the results come in on surveys about communication specifically, and specifically communication from leadership. And so we worked a lot with Wendy already to identify ways that we can improve our communication from the top down in the district. You've heard us talk about a podcast. We have that in place where I think I'm safe to say August 11th will probably be the first episode of the podcast will be posted. And then we're looking at doing that weekly. But
Tell them what it's called?
Yes, I need that.
Let's hear it.
Oh no, it's terrible.
Wendy's excited about it.
I was kind of excited about it.
No,
What's up with the soup?
Yes. She'll open it that way every single time.
I will.
But we're looking to build off of that. We're not just wanting to do one fun new thing in a podcast. We really want to be able to work with Wendy and all the leadership in the district to communicate in a different way and let community members and employees hear directly from the leaders. We want to be able to communicate process more instead of just talking about the decisions that have been made and why they've been made after the fact, those types of things. So a lot of the work we'll do this year is to accomplish that, to figure out ways to better do that. We have a makeshift studio getting set up in our office right now to do the recording, and we'll continue to push for a more permanent place to hopefully be able to set that up to improve both the equipment and the ability to do more with that equipment as the year goes on. But we're excited about the changes that hopefully we can do this year.
Cool. Awesome. And congrats on the award.
Thank you.
Any questions or clarifications needed from Caleb before he sits down?
Just for the public's sake, do you want to tell about the award they received?
Why don't you tell us that we received, I say we,
6.
you guys received 6 awards, and there was a total of how many given to the entire state?
So throughout Utah, I found 11 awards that were received from different districts. We received 6 of them. This comes from the National School Public Relations Association, so we're part of the Utah State chapter of that, and they have the national organization. So the awards are judged based off of the merit of the work. It's not like they say they only have this many awards. The judges look at that, and if you are deserving of the award, they give you the award. So something like the blog, I believe we were one of 10 districts to get that in the country this year. And everything else, it was one of between 60 and 100. So it's not a ton of districts getting these awards. So we're proud of the work that we're able to do, and that was recognized. We received 6 of them. The Provo Way Award campaigns, the way we do that was the biggest award we received. There's 2 different levels. There's the Golden Achievement Awards, which is a little bit higher level, and that's what we got for the Provo Way Awards. And then there's digital and publication digital media awards. And so we received an award for our blog, for our website. 2 of Spencer's stories received awards, and then the summer newsletter that Sean and our department puts out was recognized.
So awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. So for my departments, what I've got, I'm going to touch on each of the 3 departments. Transportation. Transportation is how do I put this? An anchor to our district. They're the ones that get our kids to and from schools, right? And not only that, the ones that get them to their activities after schools safely. And not only that, are they doing it? The one thing they are doing is they're doing it by spending the least amount per student in the state. Our transportation costs are the least amount per student in the state. Now, while we're championing that, I know Troy has his frustrations with that, right? And I know our schools have frustrations with that because they're spending money out of their own budgets to transport kids, right? So that's a weakness, that we probably are not fully at the capacity to meet the needs, but our costs are low, and his department is happily doing it with a smile. So, thank you, Troy. For our child nutrition department, they're doing really great. Also, they just went through a revamping in their department. Originally, they were being told, "Hey, we didn't have enough people. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough people. We need more help." Our new child nutrition director came in, revamped the staffing matrix, revamped how they serve food, and they were able to actually, at our child nutrition director's recommendation, actually reduce the number of staff and then boost wages. So that was a huge win for their department. But the one thing we've got to work on there is going to be processes, right? No different than what I've got for some of my other stuff that I'll bring up. But to me, our biggest weakness across is just we don't have a lot of processes that are documented or followed very well. We ended up buying, unfortunately, it was like right when I started, our old child nutrition director ended up getting a truckload of turkey. And that turkey all came at once, and so now we've got frozen turkey all over, just trying to use it all up. Right? And so there's just some things like that.
Be more efficient.
Yes, correct. Okay.
Can I just ask, when you said reduce wages, you don't mean we
reduce the number of people to
okay.
increase the wages.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, boost. I heard reduce. I'm like, wait, you did it?
Boosted.
Thank you. Sorry. Gotta clarify. Sorry. Thank you. Because you were like, oh, good. And I was like,
we reduced the people and cut their wages.
I know, that's why I was writing that. That can't be right. I gotta. Sorry. Go ahead.
Nobody freaked out over that?
I was freaking out. Reducing wages. Like, oh, good. Oh. Sorry, Derek. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Our finance department, our finance department has ran very lean for what they've got, but they've been able to do a great job of what they've been given. We got 2 awards this year. One of them was the as the AFR certification. We were awarded that, and we were notified that even though we were late because we had to completely redo the budget one, which we talked about, we were just awarded the budget award also, and we ended up cranking that out within like 3-4 weeks. So for us to have gotten that one also was a huge win for that department. And so that's what I'd love to highlight about those 3 departments. They're all doing amazing. Our maintenance department. I would love to highlight our maintenance department also. Our maintenance department has probably gone through the biggest number of changes in these last couple of years. We've completely revamped and restructured the maintenance department. The other thing that we've done is we've brought in more processes and procedures in place to try to help bring organization around it. That way schools got an understanding of when projects were going to happen. They got feedback when the projects were finished. And then we also have a priority matrix of what projects should be getting done also. So there was a big restructuring done in maintenance, and that's been a big focus from my standpoint and Kyle's. And I'm happy with the way things are going. I'd say the biggest weakness overall, and I'm going to keep this high level because I don't want to, call out any one individual area because it could be used in the public, right? But to me, the biggest weakness that I've seen is around processes and just some inherent risks that we need to address. And I'm happy to talk about. I've talked with Olivia a little bit about one of them. I'm happy to talk any in depth, but in a public event, I think it's quite appropriate, just because it would get that out.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions from Derek on anything there? Okay. Raj, were you planning to present today?
It's just part of my department.
Yeah.
Okay, you're good. Okay, I just saw you walk in and I thought I'd just check and make sure. Okay, perfect. So that's everyone, right? We're good there? Okay. Awesome. That was great. Thank you so much to our council. We appreciate all you do, and we're super excited about all of the great things that have happened this last year, and look forward to all the things coming. It's gonna be great. Okay, moving on to our next item, which is the revised bus routes for Shoreline Middle School, and we will hear from Troy.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
We'll get it pulled up so I can tell. There you go. Perfect.
So Derek asked me to put a little something together as far as where we're at with what the busing is going to look like for the needs in when the school opens next year. So this right here is the layout of what the zones will look like as far as in the state. The Utah Secondary is all, it's a 2-mile walk zone regardless of hazards from the closest entrance to the school to in front of the house that the students are coming from. So the red area represents bus eligible students. The numbers that I pulled were 95% accurate, I'd say, as far as based off the current 5th and 6th graders from this last school year. So those are the numbers that I'm using here. So it puts approximately right now 400 kids eligible for transportation, which require 7 buses. Right now we're running 9 out of Dixon. And then as far as in the walk zone, puts 394 right there.
Roughly about a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
It's darn close.
Yeah. So now I know there's been concerns brought up as far as with the area. So go to the next page. So up in the, I don't know if you want to call that teal, in the walk zone north of Center Street, everything there on the east side of the train tracks, we've got approximately 229 students that would be, 108 students that would be in that area needing to cross Center Street, as well as the tracks to get down to Shoreline. And then just below that, south of Center Street, you have 57 students. So with that number, if everybody rode, that would be approximately 3 buses. Buses are 84 capacity at 3 to a seat. Junior high, 56 is 2. We usually try to, not 100% ridership, keep it around to somewhere mid-60s. Some students do, require to ride 3 to a seat. So based on that right there with the hazards, go to the next one. The Utah, as far as what's that? Oh, so this is just the current zone. If as far as for reference, 511 students, 317. So with that, you do have the areas that we're currently busing the ineligible kids. That, like I said, it's 2 miles regardless of hazard for what the state funds. So a lot of the kids, you know, their path would be, you know, going over the viaduct to get there, you know, probably the most dangerous current intersection in Utah. And then as well as, you know, down below you have the train tracks, you know, once again. The train track crossing now is what's considered a safe track crossing. You know, back when all this stuff was established, you know, there wasn't a safe crossing to where they got the fence, they have to zigzag through all the rumble strips, the signage and such.
Will you explain what is a safe track crossing?
Yeah, so the safe track crossing, sorry I didn't put a picture of that in, but like I said, when you approach the tracks there's a fencing that they have to zigzag back and forth, so essentially drawing to the attention that you're at train tracks, along with signage and such, that you're there. Also as far as the concrete being leveled all the way across, so you know you're not walking up and over tracks, it's all level surface. So that's what is a pedestrian safe train track crossing now. So yeah, those are the numbers, you know, where we're at right now. 184.
So this is the current Dixon.
Yeah, this is current data from this year.
Yeah. And the current Dixon site. So that's the difference. So if you go back one picture, this is the shoreline site, right? The other one, it shows you where the Dixon site is.
Right. Yeah. So that's just, you know, essentially the shift of what we're looking at. So as far as with the board, you know, you guys can go ahead and down here to vote to approve to transport the students that are in walking hazard areas, as far as with the tracks and the considerations that are, you know, need to be taken into place when determining as far as the hazards to pay for it out of local funds. So I just got the rule up there, and then as far as you know, the 1.5 mile and 2 mile, how it's written to where it doesn't say it in there, but it is regardless of hazard.
So the underlined bolded part there, we can approve that, but that means that we pay for it out of our pocket, correct?
Yeah, the state does not reimburse for anybody within those the mileage distance.
So then we go to the next slide really quick. Now, perfect. This is let's go through this really quick, just so that way we can show, if you go back to the areas that are walking, this is kind of the impact to make them bus it. Right?
Yeah, so to get all those students that are, you know, on the other side of the tracks in Center Street, we need to increase from the current Dixon buses. We need to essentially add one more extra bus in there, and that puts our capacities, you know, around 62ish, if they're evenly distributed. So anyways, but to accomplish that, right now we do have one bus that doesn't have a junior high route. That a couple years back they had trouble getting to Edgemont on time, so we were able to make a change to pull them off of that route. But in order to utilize that bus to get the buses where we need, and it's not essentially that bus going up, but to make the change work, it would impact the bell time for Edgemont, because right now for like our Centennial buses, you know, the bell rings for them at 2:55, we roll at 3:03. Well, when you got elementaries out at 3:20, we only have 17 minutes to make it from the back of Centennial, you know, down to our locations and back to the school. So it's really difficult to make those times to turn around. So yeah, so we can add another bus in there with adjusting the release time on Edgemont.
And if we add the one bus and go to 10.
Yeah, if we go to 10, if everybody's bused, because we need essentially 2 for north of Center Street and 1 for the south of Center Street. So 3 unfunded routes, essentially to get that done. We obviously have the 2 buses that are currently already running and working, so we have the drivers and buses. And we have a third one that doesn't have a route that we can bring in and make work, that we can add on.
So we don't have to buy a bus, is that what you're saying?
We don't have to buy a bus.
Okay.
You know, so, you know, as long as once we get fully staffed, we'll have a driver on it too.
But we do need to hire a new driver.
No. It's on an established route. So this route, it does a Provo High and an Edgemont. It doesn't do a junior high.
But we do fund 3 routes that we're not currently funding.
Right now, we are funding. Are we paying for any additional routes for safe routes over to Dixon?
That was
Yeah,
my question.
yeah.
We're doing 9 buses, but we're funding out of our pocket 2.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this would really
roughly.
be only
One.
an increase of funding,
Oh,
one
I
additional
see, I
bus
see. Yeah,
compared
yeah,
to
yeah.
normal, right?
Correct,
Compared to what we've
correct,
been
yeah.
doing.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we
it's
need
just
to add
basically
one.
one additional
That's correct,
bus
yeah.
that we're not already currently funding.
And
Okay.
you're saying there's already a bus with a driver that does other routes, so really we're only funding a little more time for that
Yeah,
driver?
well, okay, because she's already on the time assistance because she's on a layover.
Okay.
But she's not running a route. She sits in front of Edgemont waiting for their release time right now. So we can utilize that. You know, it'd be like a shift of putting her onto a Centennial route, moving a Centennial driver down over to a Shoreline route based on where they start and stop the logistics to get them to their next schools in a timely manner.
So it's minimal financial impact.
For one extra FTE, we're talking 70 grand.
What's the instructional impact?
But
She's
I
already
thought she's
driving.
already
And that's if
driving,
it's
right?
full-time, that's if it's
Yeah, she's already
full-time.
driving, so it's not even
It's just
that.
adding one more route to
It's
her?
the cost of the wear and tear on the bus and then the fuel used.
So you're saying it's not even an extra FTE, it's just increasing one additional route?
For that one, yes.
So it's just a few extra hours for that driver, right? Or is it still within his or her time that they already are?
It would be the cost that it would come to us because we already have the bus and it's going to be the cost of the fuel because she's already working, she's already getting paid on a layover.
Okay.
But it would be the
extra driving.
well we actually would take a hit on the time now.
So a little bit of additional time and just additional fuel?
Correct.
And that's
then the wear and
really the
tear,
only
and
increase?
standard maintenance stuff.
Okay.
And they lose a little bit of layover on their bus route.
Yeah. So I mean, usually like right now, a lot of our elementary buses, they're running tight to get there because traffic increases year to year and it gets difficult to get around.
Can I ask about the kind of cost or impact for Edgemont on these 10 minutes? I mean, maybe Jared, you want to, I don't know who wants to speak to this, but I imagine that that's not zero impact to have a 10-minute delay. Are the students still released at 3:20, but the bus comes at 3:30, or are we actually extending the school day by 10 minutes?
My guess is he's asking for essentially the bell schedule to change. So the let out would essentially be 3:30, and we
So
would have to
start
manage
10
it
minutes
through,
later.
yeah.
Either start 10 minutes later and let out 10 minutes later, or add 10 minutes to
Yeah,
the
whatever, like whether the, principal wants to, just manage those kids for an extra 10 minutes, knowing that we can't make it on time and still operate on that same schedule. Canyon Crest, they've throughout the years, they've had to adjust their bus schedule because it's hard to make it that far north up there. Same with Spring Creek. They're out at 3:30 as well because we can't, in that 17-minute window we don't have enough time to turn a full route.
And they just start later than some of the schools that get out earlier.
I think they still start at 8:40, don't they?
No, well, Canyon Crest used to start at 8:50. I don't know.
I think Spring Creek still does 8:40.
They can pick
They'd
it
have to
out.
work it out. They could add 10 minutes to their day, they could start 10 minutes later and end 10 minutes later. There's options. It's not a zero impact for sure, but that's something they'd have to work out.
But is that gonna mess up your morning routes if they're starting 10 minutes later now, so then you have to redo any routes that way?
No, because the elementary is the last, so we're all tiered routing, so we start with high school, then we drop them off, then we start our junior high level, and drop them off, then we go into the elementary school level. So it's all tiered routing. In the afternoon it goes the reverse. We do high school out, then we do all junior high, and then we do elementary.
So would they be fine?
So it's all tiered in a row.
Troy, do you know how many kids ride that bus on that late route at Edgemont?
There's no late bus at Edgemont.
I'm sorry, this one.
The regular ed one?
10 minutes.
Top of my head, no, I'd probably say somewhere around maybe 35, 40.
From prior experience being the principal there, this is the bus that goes to Carterville, and it's probably got somewhere between 15 and 25 kids ranging on what's going on in the women's homeless shelter. This is Carterville, has the highest impact on this bus. These are kids that you want to have supervised, just from prior experience. Just to stand out on the curb waiting 10 more minutes to start out 10 more minutes. It's best if they're in class and they've got adults continuing to do meaningful things with them. And any kid, I don't mean to say that about Carterville kids, they're wonderful kids, but that's the only bus that runs at Edgemont, is this one that goes to the Carterville part of the community.
I'm just thinking about principals and they have IEPs after school and different things that we can't let that as an expectation on a principal to be supervising for an extra 10 minutes.
I'd recommend we do approve it on the part and try and adjust the start time.
Did you say the max capacity for a middle school bus is 84?
That's 3 seat, that's a bus in general, but you try to put 84 high schoolers, football players on, that's not happening. But kind of like that, as far as like a utilization chart that the state looks at for what they would consider a full bus is in the mid-60s zone, so it's like 62, 64 for junior high level.
Do you know, does the state ever look at like the 2-mile radius? Like, how many kids are walking 2 miles to school?
They make us do for the miles and minutes. They pretty much make us put in where their kids are addressed at to then go and say, okay, which kids are eligible.
Yeah, I guess all I'm saying is, is that metric ever really looked at? Like, is that the best metric? That I know. I didn't know.
And we report the miles and minutes to the state every year. Every year is what we report.
That's why I guess talk to the state about, hey, 2 miles. It's just not, yeah. Or even a 1.5 miles for elementary school. Like, unless we have safer routes to then to walk or bike.
Urban area where you have stuff like this going on.
And we don't have the infrastructure to all these people. So that was not on you. I
Yeah,
was curious if you knew
I
if
don't-
the state
I don't
ever
right
said,
off the
maybe
top of
we
my
should
head.
relook at this metric.
I know that, it gets asked often, but.
We do they have focus groups. I'd say I've been a part of 2 of them actually from the state where they pull business administrators together to talk about this formula and do we want to make any tweaks to it. The problem with it is it's because of the design of the formula, no districts cannot coalesce around a cleaning the formula up, because what happens is what impacts the rural districts is a major windfall for Ryan, or what's a major windfall for here massively impacts. So that's why they go with the hybrid approach. It's the miles and minutes, because the way it's been designed, and because there's such a massive difference in our transportation saving compared to UWinter's or GWAP's or something like that, they look at it quite often. I think in 6 years I could think of 2 focus groups I've been part of.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have any more questions for Troy? Or comments, concerns? Gina?
Thank you for doing the work. Appreciate it. My community is pretty concerned about this, and I really push to have the discussion now, because if we do need to fund it, then I think we need to have discussion now rather than next, August of 2024. So I appreciate Derek and Troy putting this together and having the discussion.
My ask would be is if we're going to fund something, is to give us a budget of like 120 grand to make sure that if there is an FTE that needs to be hired, we can hire it. That way we're not just trying to be like, we think we can get it together with extra people and routes and
yeah, because I mean that was
120 grand for
not for that would be the additional hours plus an FTE, so it's not plus fuel plus
Okay. So instead of the 70, which you kind of quoted, go to 120. So that there's some leeway if there's others.
I didn't really pull my numbers too conservative. It was running best utilized taxpayer dollar to full buses. So those numbers change and they can get crowded quick. And then if we'd have to have a bus, that's more.
So, but just to clarify, at this point, we feel like all it is should be a pretty minimal cost, right? Because we're just adding a middle school route to an already established driver, right? And so then I guess from here, this doesn't actually need to happen for another year, right?
Yep.
So when would be the appropriate time for us to bring you back to give us actual,
How much time you need to make a decision?
Right.
I would say once we have our October 1 account, we can start deciding, because at that point the enrollments are all set and we kind of know where everything is.
October 1 in 2024?
2023.
So we can budget it for our next.
We'll need to put it in the budget for next.
October 1st, 2023, this year, we will have our October 1 counts for what students are at Dixon for 7th grade and the
6th graders that would come
cohort that goes there to 7th. So we will know that and their addresses to then be able to plot map that out and give you a final cost.
Yeah, because I need to know how I'm building the
after,
routes
okay.
and where we're, balancing them out with the boundaries and stuff.
So sometime after October, we'd have you come back with actuals, not just estimates, and then we can vote on it, correct?
Yeah, it would be the actuals based on whatever the current enrollment is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'll make a little note of that to make sure we get you back after October.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are you writing it down?
I
Yeah,
know, but you can take
well, I have to conduct this meeting, so you write it down. Okay, but speaking of, that's all we have on our schedule today. So is there a motion to adjourn our study session?
And will we adjourn the study session?
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you,
1 hour
everybody.
and 2 seconds.
Wow.
And that was probably 2 seconds of